Hello readers, welcome to my summer haul revisit. If you don't know already, if I do a book haul, say in this case in the summer, then 2 seasons later, which is right now in the winter, in January, as I'm filming this, I will revisit those books that I bought in whatever season was 2 seasons ago, like I said, in this case, in the summer, and I will go through a list and see, have I read these books or have I not read these books? Because if I haven't, I should really get to that. And I've only done one of those videos before because I've had my channel since April, so I started my revisits with the spring revisit, which I filmed in fall. So this is the second time that I've been doing this, and in writing down the books that I bought this summer, I figured maybe I should check up on my spring haul revisit. I wonder how I've done. So, thusly, I added a different section for my second haul revisit that I've gotten to do. And for that, I am going to start with the books that I bought in spring that at the time of my video in the fall, I hadn't read yet, which in that case there were 13 books, and of those 13 unread books, I read 2. And the point of the haul revisit was to take more responsibility for my purchases. So yeah, I'm adding a new section. I'm going to be really hard on myself. So I'm going to look at the books, the 11 books that I have not read yet, and I have to make the decision. Am I going to read them in the next, let's say 2 to 3 months, because I do have some stuff coming up and I'm not going to be able to read all of these immediately. So am I going to read them in the next 2 to 3 months, or am I going to unhaul them? This was a really tough decision for me to make, to decide to go ahead and unhaul these books that I bought, but I haven't read them yet, and this whole year is about my low buy, where I'm only buying 12 books in 2020. If I decide to buy more, there are consequences to that. It's about me taking responsibility for the money that I am spending and the books that I am purchasing. And looking at my spring haul revisit and how poorly I've done on those books since then, clearly this is something I need to work on, so this is the time that I am taking to work on that. So I'm going to go ahead and get that started, and then I will talk to you about my summer haul revisit. So in my first video, I actually picked the names randomly out of a jar. This time, I think I'm just going to go through them as I've ordered them on my shelves, which is for the most part the order in which I talked about them in my original videos. So, spring haul revisit will be linked up above if you want some more information on what I'm doing right now. So let's start with The Glass Castle. I have not watched the movie. I heard a lot about the movie. I heard a lot about the book. I am nervous about reading this now because I heard that it's similar to Educated, and honestly, I didn't find that book all that interesting. It's a narrative we've seen before. The writing wasn't anything particularly special. I think a lot of the draw to that book was that people are really interested in traumatic things. But I do think that I would still like to read this. It was on my Nonfiction November to read list, and I just never got around to it. This one will be staying. I will be reading it by April, which will have been 1 year after I hauled it, which just kind of makes me feel ashamed of myself all over again. There are a lot of books on my TBR shelves that I've had for several years now, but I'm not including them in these videos because I got them before BookTube. But anyways, next book I have is Delta of Venus. I did actually start this book on my way to Los Angeles for my honeymoon. I got like 2 stories into this. It's like an erotic story collection from Anais Nin, I want to say is how you pronounce her name. I'm probably butchering that. I already talked to a friend about this whenever we were having coffee yesterday. I will be gifting her this book, so that is going in the unhaul pile. The Witches by Stacy Schiff. Now, I am going to make some exceptions for the books in this selection. The Witches is a nonfiction history about the Salem witch trials. I am very interested in reading this. I did start the introduction to it at one point, which introductions, you know, sometimes you read them, sometimes you don't. I might actually want to do a video on that at some point. But as interested as I am in reading this, I might try reading her book on Cleopatra first, which I have had for longer, and which I think is a little shorter than this one. I've heard some really good feedback on that book, and reading that one might help me come to understand her writing style a little better, and might help me get into this more. So I will be keeping this, but I won't necessarily read it by April. Then we have Lolita, which is one of the 2 books that I actually did read. I did this as a buddy read with one of my subscribers. I enjoyed it a lot more than the first time I read it. It was fine. However, I do think I'm going to unhaul this. I did a classics unhaul recently, which I will link up above. And as much as I enjoyed it this time around, it's not one that I think I'm ever going to reread again. So, yeah, going to go ahead and give that one up. Saturday by Ian McEwan. I really love Ian McEwan. I don't remember what this book is about. Ordinary man whose high promise turns nightmarish. It's about a neurosurgeon, traffic accident. So, like I said, I've really enjoyed Ian McEwan's books so far. I don't know why I haven't picked this up. I think it's just like, I picked it up at one point and I wasn't really in the mood. But I do want to read this. I am going to be holding on to that. Evelyn Waugh, I think is how you say the name. That's usually how I hear it pronounced. I don't usually say Evelyn as an American. I typically say Evelyn, but we'll go ahead and say Evelyn because that's how I keep hearing it pronounced. This was a book cover buy when I went a little crazy on Book Depository. Again, it's that edition of Penguin, which, let's be honest, most Penguin books are kind of collected editions of some sort or another. I have heard that this is supposed to be kind of Great Gatsby-esque. That wasn't my favorite book ever. One of my friends is interested in this, so I think I'm going to go ahead and unhaul it and give it to her. It's upsetting to me that I'm giving up so many of my Penguin modern classics. But again, as I discussed in my recent unhaul, there's just no reason for me to have as many classics as I do when I don't read most of them. Virginia Woolf, Orlando. I have been putting this off because I'm nervous. I started Mrs. Dalloway, I got like halfway through it, could not stand it. As much as I have heard Virginia Woolf talked about, no one ever really told me that she was a stream of consciousness writer. I am one of those apparently rare birds who is really dependent on writing style for my books. If I don't like the writing style, I won't read the book, no matter how good the plot or characters. I have watched the movie for Orlando. This is actually, it's the only movie cover I've ever seen that I've legitimately liked. And I want to read the book because I want to see the original content that inspired the movie. I want to see this idea that she had that was really cool. It's this person who changes sex like kind of spontaneously at one point and lives several hundred years. But again, I'm nervous about it because now I have an idea of Virginia Woolf's writing style. And as a feminist, I feel like I must be a really terrible feminist if I don't like Virginia Woolf, because everyone's like, oh, Virginia Woolf, she was so great, she meant so much. But then I also have to remind myself, especially as a booktuber and a big reader, and when we talk about reading on Twitter and on Instagram, we have to recognize that not everyone has to love the same authors. And I keep reminding myself, if I end up not liking Virginia Woolf, that's okay. I'm not saying she's not a prolific author. I'm not saying she's not important. I'll just be saying she may not be the author for me, and that's okay. So I will be keeping this. It kind of reminds me of Toni Morrison when I went through and tried to read some of her books. I thought that she had some really important stuff to say, but being literary fiction, I had a lot of trouble understanding the way that she was saying things. I had trouble with her writing style as much as I appreciated her message. So I did end up gifting almost all of those books. I do have one left on here that I'll be talking about. A Vindication of the Rights of Woman by Mary Wollstonecraft. This one, I just don't know what to do with. At this point, I love having it on my shelf. I love the message that it was trying to get across, but also I can tell you I'm never going to read it. I picked it up at one point, and it's very old classic language. It is very dry. It is very studious. I'm not going to be able to read this. It's just not within my capabilities as a reader right now. But I want to keep it on my shelf because it feels really important. But also it's taking up space that could be used for other books. For now, I'm going to hold on to it. But it's definitely one that I'm going to keep revisiting and think, should this really be on my shelf if I'm never going to read it? Next up, I have Michael Crichton's 5 Patients. This one I am keeping. I love Michael Crichton. I have a lot of his books. I haven't loved everything that he's written. Of course, the ones that I haven't loved, I haven't really finished either. I should probably give them more of a chance. But this one, from what I understand, is a nonfiction about 5 patients. Michael Crichton, as far as I know, did have some medical training or a medical degree of one type. I should probably look into that more. But I'm really interested in reading this. It's a fairly short book. I should get through it pretty quickly. Thinner by Stephen King. This is another book that is kind of an exception to my reading rule. Stephen King books that I pick up, they're used books, generally from the Friends of the Library, and I get them just because we're collecting Stephen King at this point. My husband is a lover of classic Stephen King books. I just kind of started adding to the collection to see what else he might be interested in. So some of the Stephen King books that I get, I'm interested in reading, and some of them I am not. I'm also kind of pacing myself as I go through them. I've loved some Stephen King. I've hated some Stephen King. There are even a couple of books that I've been kind of meh on. I am interested in reading Thinner, but this is also not a book that I'm going to kind of give myself a timeline for when I'm going to read. So I should actually just start separating these into piles of what will be read soon and what won't. Lilac Girls. I got this, I think, like just when I was starting BookTube. I must have, because, I have it in this pile. This one, I've kind of been back and forth on at this point because I look at this cover and I have seen so many books in the last year with this pretty much exact cover in slightly different colors. This, people, we gotta come up with some different book cover ideas. Seriously. But, I'm thinking it looks interesting. Sometimes I'm thinking maybe I should unhaul it. Sometimes I go back to thinking it looks interesting. It is a World War II fiction, which is a specific historical fiction era that I am really interested in. And recently, I think it was Call Me After Coffee, and I don't remember the name of the person who runs that channel, but there is a historical fiction dedicated month, February thing, and within that month, she specifically is doing a historical fiction readathon for, I think, about 2 weeks. So I am interested in that. I don't read nearly as much historical fiction as I would like to, considering it's a genre that I usually really enjoy. So I am going to do my best to read this in February as part of the historical fiction readathon. If you hear some thumping and some crinkly noises, that's the kitten, probably being a bad kitten, as he usually is. Last book that I had not read at that point was The Dark Crystal. I have seen some of the new series. I didn't actually see the original movie until probably 6 months ago? No, it was before I got this book, so it was almost a year ago. I did enjoy the movie. I think I'm going to watch it again and then read this. As far as I know, this is basically kind of a scripting of the movie, so they made a book from the movie rather than a movie from the book, which you don't see a ton of books made from movies like this. So, I'll read it over. I figure once I watch the movie again and read this book, I'll be more interested and better prepared to watch the new TV series that's out, which my husband has been thoroughly enjoying. So, sorry, dining room table means moving camera. That was my spring haul revisit. And now it is time for the summer haul. So from the spring haul revisit, I have 2 books that I'm going to read, but not necessarily until by April. one book that I'm not going to read and that I'm keeping on my shelves, and that gives me 6 books to have read by April or unhaul, which again feels like a really harsh rule and makes me uncomfortable, but with how much I purchased books last year, I need to be made uncomfortable because I need to realize how much money I'm spending that's not really going into anything. Anyways, summer haul revisit. So one of my rules for this is if I bought a book for that haul that I'd already read before and that I was just buying because I wanted a copy for myself, I wanted a copy on my shelves, I am not including that in these haul revisits because I have already read it. So let's get started. I'm really afraid my books are all going to collapse. So I have From Here to Eternity by Caitlin Doughty. This is her book on death kind of around the world. I gotta say, I did not like it as much as I liked When Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. So I read this for Nonfiction November, and it was good, it was interesting, but it was just really missing out on the personality that she gave us in When Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. I am interested in reading Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs, which is her book on questions that kids have about death. This book is staying on my shelf, at least for now, because I love the cover and the content is interesting enough, but I may unhaul it eventually. Another book that I got at Barnes & Noble when I was in Minnesota was The Psychopath Test. This book, I enjoyed the content, I didn't love the writing. I have tried So You've Been Publicly Shamed by Jon Ronson. I got a couple of chapters into that and just wasn't feeling it. Psychopath Test is basically exploring a test that was created to identify psychopaths, and it's discussing how we will diagnose our friends and relatives and strangers with illnesses that we've learned about, whether online or in books or from medical dramas. Like, we self-diagnose all the time, and it's kind of talking about how that's a problem. This is another one. It's going to stay on my shelves for a bit, and I'm probably going to come back to it from time to time, but I can see unhauling it eventually. But also, I mean, look at this cover. And last, for the books that I got in Minnesota, I have Women Talking. I will link my review up above if I have space for my review, because you can only put like 5 links up here, which is understandable but kind of annoying. Anyways, I adored this book. The premise itself looked interesting. It's about a Mennonite colony. The women were being attacked while sleeping and eventually discovered that the men of the colony were drugging them and raping them. And this isn't a nonfiction, but it's like a fiction based on a true story where Miriam Taves, which I mispronounce the author's name in my review. Miriam Taves is a Canadian author. She is a Mennonite, so this is Own Voices, and she basically made a dialogue about the different options that the women had and their exploration of those options and how they eventually decide to handle the whole situation. I really love this. If you're interested in the Mennonite culture at all, if you're interested in this story, just please pick it up. It was amazing. It's not for everyone. It's not one that I thought I would love because it is very dialogue heavy. There's not necessarily a plot, but it was so good. I adored it. So now we've got some book depository books to go through. Stephen King's Misery. I did read this. I enjoyed it. It's not my favorite Stephen King. I definitely don't think that the movie is as well done as people say it is. Just there was quite a bit of the abuse in the story that was left out that I think would have had a little more of an impact. And the stuff that they did with the sheriff in that movie didn't really make me happy. But it was good. The first 20 pages I think you could skip because it's just the drugged ramblings of the main character that don't make any sense and that don't go anywhere. But it was fine. Like I said, it's not my favorite Stephen King, but it was fine. Towelhead. Going to link my review above, again, if there's room. If there's no room, then of course they will be linked in the description below. I adored this. It was heavy. I'm going to reread it at some point. I have lots and lots of post-it notes put in here. The link will explain my history with this particular story, but I loved it. It's staying on my shelves. I did end up reading it. Good for me. Daphne du Maurier's My Cousin Rachel. Daphne du Maurier I first started reading, I think early last year, maybe a little bit at the end of 2018, because I read Rebecca. I loved it. My Cousin Rachel I didn't like as much. It was a slower plot and I wasn't entirely sure where it was going, but I did enjoy it. I also read one of her short story collections, which I really loved, and I just got The Birds and Other Stories, which I'm hoping to pick up soon. I enjoyed it. Like I said, it wasn't as much of a favorite as Rebecca was, but you have a guy who's raised by his cousin, thinks he's never going to get married, and then eventually, mysteriously, when the guy goes off to Italy for the winter, he does end up getting married, and then he dies. Did she kill him? Did she not kill him? Who knows? The book takes forever to get into what may or may not have happened. I'm not sure. I don't even remember how this book ended. It was just that long-winded, but it was still really good. Daphne du Maurier taught me that just because a book is a slow burn doesn't mean I'm gonna hate it. Because I thought I hated slow burns, but then I started reading Daphne du Maurier. So, next up we have another exception to the reading rule, and that is Shirley and Villette, both by Charlotte Bronte. The Brontes are sisters that I am working on reading my way through. I did read Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte, really enjoyed it. The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte, which I also enjoyed. I think I liked Agnes Grey better. It's been a little bit since I've read both of them. And next up is Shirley and Villette. I did try to read Shirley, I think in December of 2019, and was really struggling with it. Charlotte's writing style for me isn't as accessible as Anne Bronte's, and it's very much set in a specific period of time. Certain economic and social things are happening, and she's kind of using that part to set the stage, and that part's just not as interesting to me. But I am going to try diving into this. I've already spoiled some of the book for myself by reading the introduction. Again, I might do a video on introductions eventually. But I'm hoping to get to this soon. My plan is to read Shirley and then Villette. I don't know if Shirley was written first or Villette first, but for whatever reason I decided I was reading Shirley first. So I will get to these two this year. I just am not really giving myself a timeline for it. Then I have The Uses of Enchantment, which I picked up because it's about fairy tales. It's a nonfiction about fairy tales. I am really interested in reading this. However, it also has really tiny writing that's kind of putting me off a little bit. I do need to start getting on this though, because like I said, haul revisits are about taking responsibility for my purchases. Let's see, I have a gift that I got maybe around summer. Of course I got it around summer. Why am I even thinking about this? These are all summer books. It's been a long morning already. Anyways, my mom knows about me reading through the Bronte books, and she gifted me Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I will not be going into Emily Bronte's poetry. I'm not a big poetry person, but hopefully my ideal plan is to have read Shirley and Villette by Charlotte Bronte, to then read Jane Eyre, and to make it to Wuthering Heights by Christmas. I don't know how well I'm going to be able to stick to that plan, but I am hoping. That will get read eventually. Then I have Loop and Spiral. These are books 2 and 3 in the Ring series by Koji Suzuki. I read Spiral. It was fine. I had a lot of issues with it. I started Loop. It was disgusting. I officially cannot stand Koji Suzuki. I see him as a very, very problematic author, to the point where, like, I'm not really comfortable reading him anymore. These books will be unhauled. Goodbye. I don't know. I want to read more non-American writers. I'm so on Japanese authors. I've enjoyed a couple of books. I've hated a couple of books. I have had no luck with French authors. Any French author that I've read, I have ended up hating the book. I believe I've read like 2 or 3. Read a couple of North Korean authors. They were whatever you call the people who escape from North Korea, Defectors. I've read a couple of those books and really enjoyed them. Canadian authors I have excellent luck with. So I would like to explore more outside of America and see if I can find some books that I'm enjoying. Because Koji Suzuki, again, some stuff happened in those books and I don't really even want to talk about it. It was just bad. Moving on to reading Lolita in Tehran. I was hoping to read this around the time that I read Lolita. I did not end up getting around to it. I want to read this soon. I got this at a used bookstore in town. Yeah, it's the very next nonfiction that is on my list. Except maybe The Glass Castle, because I should probably read that first because I've had it for longer. Also 5 Patience. I'm really making a to-do list for myself here. Next up, we have 2 more Stephen King, that is Bag of Bones and Just After Sunset. Just After Sunset is a short story collection, so I'm not really interested in reading it. Bag of Bones, I can see myself maybe picking that up eventually. Not right now. And those are really just for my husband's Stephen King collection. Then we have Mein Kampf, which I am putting absolutely no pressure on myself to start reading. I'm sure all of you are going to have lots and lots of opinions. Let me say, I do not have much of a problem with reading problematic authors. I have enjoyed some Marion Zimmer Bradley. She wrote The Mists of Avalon. I really loved that book. I recognize that she was a very terrible person. I have that knowledge. I know she's terrible, but that doesn't really mean that I can't enjoy her works. Problematic authors make good books too. J.K. Rowling, I'm not gonna be supporting her future books. She is alive. She is currently benefiting from my reading. I'm just not too hot on her as a person anymore. Koji Suzuki went problematic in a particular way that I don't want to read anymore. And yes, Hitler is a terrible person. I have no doubt that Mein Kampf is probably very boring and long-winded and unnecessary. But also, I have a pretty big interest in World War II. I really love reading about stuff that happened in World War II. I like reading the books from people who lived through World War II. I just think it's really interesting to me. I would like to at least poke through this a little bit. I want to know what exactly was on his mind, how he came to his ideas, what he was thinking. It's an interest thing. I do not support Hitler. Also, he's dead. He's not really benefiting from my purchases anymore. And yeah, I know he's a crappy person, but also I kind of want to know how he got to be a crappy person. What was going through his mind? Why was he thinking that way? This is the psychology major in me talking. I have Stephen King's Lyce's story, which I got partially because of the cover. This shovel here is a cutout, and you've got this gorgeous black and white and colorful cover underneath. It is a story that I'm intrigued by. I think this is probably going to be the next Stephen King I pick up, except maybe Salem's Lot, which I want to give another chance to. Sula is the last Toni Morrison that I have kept on my shelf outside of The Bluest Eye, which I did read and really enjoy. My friend really loves Sula. She encouraged me to read it, so Toni Morrison's getting one last chance from me before I give her up for a literary fiction writer that I just struggle with. It's a genre I've always kind of struggled with. I am hoping to pick this up soonish, kind of in a get it out of the way, will I love it, will I not, should I unhaul it, should I not, sort of a thing. Jane Austen's Lady Susan, The Watsons, and Sandition. I do have another copy of Lady Susan, but The Watsons and Sandition, I think they're both unfinished, but it's Jane Austen that you don't hear as much about as some of her other books, maybe because they're unfinished. But I am excited to see the last of her stories that she wrote before she died. Okay, if the background just dramatically changed, it's because I had to go charge my battery really quick, even though I have just a couple of books left. Anyways, scoot to the side a bit. Mennonite in a Little Black Dress. I got this at a local used bookstore. I read it while I was on my honeymoon in Los Angeles. It was fine. It was after reading Women Talking that I really wanted to read something else on Mennonites, so I saw this book, I picked it up. It was fine. It's a memoir. She's going through some life stuff, so she goes back home to try and get things together. And it was kind of all over the place. Each chapter is kind of dedicated to a different topic, but they didn't really flow all that well. Excuse me, camera. I'm over here. It was fine. I read it. It was like a 3-star book. I also ended up reading Yes, Please. Or I didn't read Yes, Please. I started Yes, Please. It was something I would have enjoyed in high school, but didn't really enjoy so much now, so I went ahead and unhauled it. Same thing for Eternal Husband and Other Stories by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I had started that for the booktube-a-thon or the reading rush, whatever they're calling it now. And I feel like it was trying to get a lot of messages across. Like, it had a point, it had a really strong message to it, but I wasn't in the mindset to read that kind of classic right now. And it was the first Russian author that I'd tried. Like, I want to get into Russian literature. That's where all the really famous classics are. You have War and Peace, you have Anna Karenina. I feel like I need to read Russian authors, but also at this point I've built them up so much in my mind that I'm really intimidated. So I did end up unhauling that book because I don't feel ready to go there yet. But I also have The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I don't know why my bridesmaid's bouquet is more important than I am to my camera. Anyways, I also have The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I am determined to pick up either this or Anna Karenina at some point this year. I need to pick a Russian author and go for it. Because I think I could really enjoy Russian authors, but I don't know because I'm intimidated, because it's one of those authors that or one of those countries' books that they're all really built up in our minds, and I find that intimidating. Anyways, yes, I had to charge my battery just for this tiny little bit at the end of my video. That is it. So, I have 6 books to read by April or unhaul, and I have 7 books left unread from my summer haul. 3 of these I'm really just going to take my time with. I don't know you, phone number. So that's already a pretty good stack for this year, and this isn't even counting the enormous winter haul that I just did. But I won't have to worry about that until summer. That's it from me. That is my revisit of my revisit and my revisit of my summer haul. I hope you all enjoyed this video. This is my attempt at making haul videos a little more interesting, a little more involved, and again, taking responsibility for my purchases, which I encourage you to do as well. Because if you're also on BookTube, you probably buy a lot of books. A lot of them are probably unread. Besides these books, like I said earlier, I have a bunch of to-be-read books on top of my bookshelves that I got before even joining BookTube that I haven't read yet, that I really need to start making a priority or just unhaul them. So, hope you enjoyed this. Please like, subscribe, be my friend on social media, and tell me to read this stuff or unhaul it and get it out of the way. I post every Wednesday, Sunday, and I will see all of you in my next video. Bye, friends.